Hi guys, to celebrate Global Accessibility Awareness Day, we've got a couple of great interviews here with a few organisations that we're partnering with. Lindsay is going to be in the interview seat for today. So there's two fantastic organisations. What I would ask you to look out for is these guys have got an incredible understanding of their customers' needs and they're delivering fantastic solutions to help them. So why would you want to listen in? Firstly, is they're fun interviews. Secondly, I think you'll learn something. And three, I'd be amazed if you don't go away and are not motivated to try and make sure that when we're designing products, services for our customers, that we think about all of their accessibility needs. Hope you enjoy, guys.
Hi Mark, so Mark, you're the founder of Signly, and Signly uses augmented reality to translate written content into British Sign Language for deaf people. Yeah. So we've been working with you for a couple of years now, and we've firstly tested with some printed materials and most recently on a browser extension line, which I'm sure we'll talk about a bit more in the session. So to start with, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how Signly came about?
Yes, so I always feel like a little bit of a fraud at these events because my background wasn't access or inclusion. I didn't have any deaf friends, I didn't work with deaf people. My day job was actually doing digital stuff for corporate. People like TK Maxx, and I ran an agency based in Hampshire, but we supported a deaf charity and had done for a long time. And part of our social good was to just do something gratis for them each year. And one year they said, could we do an app? So we said, yeah, what do you want it to do? They had absolutely no idea. They said, well, but everyone's got one, we need an app. So in the day job I was doing stuff with augmented reality. I think most sort of hearing technologists jump towards avatars. They think that maybe a machine, a robot can do signing, but just can't cope with the nuances of the language. So I thought, well, what about if we use real people signing and just attach them to printed literature so that deaf users can have a version in their mother tongue, in their native language. So we did this really rough and ready prototype, showed the guys at the charity, and they went, oh my goodness, never seen anything like it. And we thought at that point, well, someone must have done this already, but they hadn't. And so that's how the idea grew.
Amazing. And obviously Signly's come a long way since you guys started. So can you tell us a bit more about the journey and who you're currently working with at the moment?
Sure. So after we did that prototype, we were lucky enough that Roald Dahl decided to do a little trial, our local museum where we used to meet for coffee. And on the back of that, BBC Breakfast picked up the app as part of our press release, which was just, I mean, this is the thing that catapulted it into the mainstream, because one minute it's a hobby project, the next minute it's on TV, and you think, oh my goodness, what have we done? So I kind of eventually, after about 18 months, gave up the day job and shut the agency, because Signly was just so much, it was a much nicer and more worthwhile thing to work on. Lloyds, along with Network Rail, saw the potential really, really early on, and I think, you know, the BBC thing was one thing, but actually the credibility that Lloyds gave us really helped to propel it into the mainstream. From the get-go, you guys were really supportive and kind of gave us a license to operate in a genuine spirit of partnership. So things like access to the customer lab, you know, these are facilities we don't have and can't afford. And so to see the idea being properly tested, you know, with your researchers, with real customers, and, you know, have a proper write-up and analysis was incredibly helpful for us. And on the back of that, the early tests that you mentioned were all about printed leaflets.
Yep.
What your customers told us was that the leaflets then signposted more English on the webpage, and their kind of journey stopped because they go, oh, mortgages, right, I kind of get that, it's complex, let's do a little bit more digging, I'm stuck. So the task sort of shifted towards how do we inject sign language into a web page. So yeah, we did a bit of a pivot, but Lloyds were again incredibly supportive, and so currently we're working with you guys to see how we can deliver that. Obviously it's important to make sure the content's accurately translated. The content changes quite a lot, so that creates some challenges, but we're going to overcome those and launch in October. Meantime, we've got interest in what we're doing from people like Microsoft, so they're definitely sort of tracking what we're doing. We've been working with people like Shakespeare's Globe, ITV Studios are again very supportive, like you guys are. Culturally is a great fit, and we're looking at seeing if we can work with them. And meantime, ITV Signpost That's the division of ITV that signs content for Channel 4 and ITV, are content partners to deliver all of the Lloyd's content. So again, that kind of credibility that we get from these really good partnerships is absolutely awesome.
And what do you see the biggest advantage being to commercial organisations such as Lloyd's getting involved and kind of looking at things like Signly in terms of offering, I guess, a wider proposition to their customers?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I was intrigued why the financial sector really embraced this, because sometimes you just hit this sort of brick wall where you're trying to make a business case about why an organisation should do this. With Lloyd's, there wasn't that conversation, and I expected to have to try and do some ROI or no, none of that. And Jeff and Claire kind of played it back to me, and it sort of opened my eyes that actually, if you want all of your customers to be able to complete journeys independently online, which is obviously a good thing, for people to be able to do it at their own time and pace and at a place of their choosing. And why would you design stuff that just doesn't work for a whole chunk of your customers that you've identified? It would make absolutely no sense to do so. And I think underpinning that even more is the fact that you just know it is the right thing to do. And I'm sure you will accrue benefits, but the bottom line is make it work for everybody. That's a good thing. Do the right thing, make everybody feel good, customer loyalty, all of these things seem to be the drivers. And I'm sure in due course we will see and measure some results. But right now, deaf customers absolutely love it, and it gives them access to content that otherwise was completely impenetrable.
Yeah, and I think for some of our colleagues who are watching this who might not be as close as we are to British Sign Language, can you just explain a little bit about the difference between British Sign Language and normal written English, and kind of that challenge that a deaf person needs to overcome between the two?
Yeah, it's a good question, because this was the epiphany for me. So when I ran the agency, I remember saying to the charity, and I can remember cringing after I said it, well, I know they're deaf, but they can read, so surely it's okay just to write it down in English and they can read it later. And so the two things that I didn't know were that sign language, the deaf community, and these are generally people that are born deaf, would consider sign language to be its own language. And it's a rich language with its own culture and humour and all of these things, very vibrant. But it's completely different to English. They're just, it's very, very to the point, very concise. There are a whole bunch of words in English that just don't exist in sign, and actually vice versa. So you've got sign language as its own discrete thing. So it's a bit like saying to somebody who speaks French, well, it's actually worse than that. It's a bit like saying to somebody who speaks Chinese, I've written it down in English. It's like, no, they're two languages. They just don't work together. The second thing is that literacy is way lower, or potentially way lower amongst the deaf community. Not because of cognitive ability, but simply because language acquisition is very different if you're born deaf. You're just not assimilating information in the same way. So some research indicates that a deaf person's reading age when they leave school is as low as 8 or 9. So you combine those two things, you open up a massive great page of English that frankly, even if you're well educated with good literacy, can be hard work. For a deaf person, this stuff is just impenetrable. And work in the lab kind of reiterated that, where deaf customers with the best will in the world thought they could complete the journey. One guy said, I'd like to think I can do this on my own, but the reality is I couldn't, and I opened the wrong account. Whereas with this, I could have made much more informed decisions, done my research in my own time and place without having to consult family and friends, which is invasive and embarrassing. They just want to be able to complete a journey independently. Then go into branch, open the right account. And it's hearing things like that directly from deaf customers. You think, okay, there is a need here, and potentially we can use technology to overcome it.
Yeah, and I think you've just really sort of hit on the question about around why Signly is so popular with the deaf community. Do you think it is largely down to it really gives them some independence that they haven't always had?
Yeah, I mean, I can't really, as a hearing person, I can't really speak for the deaf community, but what we've seen from the research is that there is this kind of black hole where so much stuff that you and I take for granted that we've heard over the radio, or you've overheard conversation, or you've just scanned and picked something up, that information isn't always making its way to the deaf community. And whilst I think being aware of the issues is more important than just jumping straight to some sort of technological tool and parachuting it in like it's a panacea, and if the deaf awareness piece is done first and people start to embrace some of the issues and understand it, technology can complement that. And I think that's what Lloyds is doing well, is that you have this kind of foundation. There's a belief here about inclusive design and doing things right. And then if you combine that with well-chosen technical tools, then these are the things that actually do make meaningful long-term change, potentially.
Great. And for you, what do you think Signly's biggest achievement has been to date?
It is, I mean, it's great to work with big brands, don't get me wrong, but being honest, it's seeing the reaction of deaf customers. I mean, it's like every time, like, wow, it's really quite something. When people go, oh, wow, look, I've never seen anything like this before. It's like, yeah, makes it worth it.
Yeah, and we've seen that when we've been with you in the labs doing the testing. It is really quite a moment for everybody, isn't it? Definitely. Okay, and I guess final question, because it's Global Accessibility Awareness Day today. So from your experience and working with a community who have disabilities, so accessibility is really important for them, what would be your top tip to the teams that we work with in an organisation that impacts a huge part of the community, and certainly in a division where we're looking to transform the way that our customers can bank with us?
So on an individual basis, do what you're doing as an organisation, but on an individual basis. That is, talk to deaf customers. I mean, you've got deaf colleagues here as well, but talk to them, find out what their experiences are, start to understand some of the issues, deaf culture and all the things that are good and bad about being deaf. And then once you've got that kind of foundation, then potentially, with all the tremendous amounts of innovation that are happening, you'll be in a position to choose tech that will perhaps enable us to bridge some of these gaps and close the divide.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Mark.
Thank you.
Any questions from the floor that we want to include?
Yeah, I had a question. It was really interesting to hear you talk about the difference between British Sign Language and written English. I actually did that because I wouldn't have known that nuance either. But then thinking about as well, financial products can sometimes be quite complicated. And you mentioned that in sign language sometimes be more direct. Is that a challenge in trying to explain some of the nuances of the products?
Try and explain money laundering. It doesn't make much sense in English, because it sounds like you've washed a fiver in your trousers by mistake, doesn't it? And you know, deaf culture is very, very literal. And it's like, well, why are you calling it money laundering if it's got nothing to do with washing? And you think, yeah, you're right. And these are things that you get back from talking to customers in the lab. I mean, so for some of this stuff, there aren't even necessarily recognised signs. So there's another challenge. What do you do if you come up with a phrase that hasn't been signed? So they're all can be overcome. Yeah, there's a degree of complexity in there. But I mean, I think what we've been finding is that even at there's a very basic level of essential information that's missing. And so by sign language enabling those basic journeys, and then the plan is that the technology will enable users to select which journeys they need sign language versions, because some stuff is fairly straightforward, easy for us all to grasp. Other stuff is complicated, and so they can hit the button in browser and say, can I have a sign language version? And then we'll go away and bake that and serve it up and go, there you go. And then we're sort of we've enabled, but we're handing over the tool to say, you use it as you need it, because obviously it is different strokes for different folks.
I think what we found in the last piece of research was people were saying at the moment they have to rely on other people. And that's the frustration, like you're saying, it's slightly embarrassing for them, and this is what they're saying, is they have to arrange a translator to come to a branch, they have to go to a branch, which is annoying, then they have to arrange for a translator to come to the branch, or they have to ask family and friends to come and help. And it's not debilitating, but it's annoying, it's something they shouldn't necessarily have to do, because we don't ask our other customers to do it. So, as you said, it's not groundbreaking, it's not about huge complexity, it's about that real basic, making it an even playing field for everybody. And that was what really sort of struck home with a lot of these users who are doing the testing. It's not a massive shift, and we're really not being asked to do very much, but it's those basics to allow them to be a bit more independent and a bit more autonomous than they are at the moment.
So
It's like it's not a massive jump.
the story that was the one that really struck me, one of the ones that struck me on the day. But so there's this scarcity of interpreters which makes life incredibly complicated. There's about one interpreter to every 75 deaf people, and that's a European problem, it's not just in the UK. And so as a consequence, it can take you between 2, 3, maybe 6 weeks to book an appointment with an interpreter. Well, if you're overdrawn today, you can't wait 2, 3 weeks. So then customers were telling us, well, they make an appointment with their social worker for, 3, 4 days' time. But again, is the social worker particularly qualified to be able to advise them about financial stuff and what's going on? And they said they don't want to tell their friends and family if they're overdrawn because they don't want them to know what a financial mess they're in because their parents, family would worry. And you think, yeah, currently it's a bit rubbish at the moment. It wouldn't take too much to make a meaningful difference to these situations, and so that's what we're hoping to do.
Fab. Thanks, Mark.
Great, thank you.
So hi Alexander. So Alexander has joined us this morning from Be My Eyes. Thank you so much for coming in to see us on Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So Be My Eyes is a free mobile app, and your main goal is to make the world more accessible for blind and low vision people. So the app was launched in 2015, and you currently have more than 2 million volunteers that have signed up to assist blind and low vision users. That's phenomenal. In April, we're very excited that we became the first UK bank to partner with Be My Eyes, and we're now allowing our customers to connect securely with the bank through the Be My Eyes app to provide visual assistance for everyday tasks, including explaining bank statements, checking and confirming transactions, and managing money. So we are absolutely delighted to have you here today. Thanks, Alexander. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved with Be My Eyes?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me here on this important day. So Be My Eyes is a free mobile application that connects, as you said, our blind users to either sighted volunteers or company representatives. And yeah, we started in 2015, and Be My Eyes is the brainchild of our inventor Hans, who is visually impaired himself. And it was his idea to say, instead of calling friends and family over Skype or FaceTime, or wait for a neighbor to come over to read the mail or to figure out what's on the spice rack, wouldn't it be cool to have an app that just connects me with a volunteer? And with that, the idea of Be My Eyes was basically born. And we launched the app in 2015, and it was a very, very global start. Within the first 24 hours, we had more than 10,000 volunteers and more than 1,000 users, blind users in more than 30 countries. So it's a very global start, and we figured that we are onto something that can have the possibility to impact the life of a lot of people globally. And fast forwarding a little bit today, we have about 130,000 blind and low vision people using the app, and 2.2 million volunteers in 150 countries. And what we can do is that we can assist blind and low vision individuals in more than 185 different languages. So we only connect people who speak the same language, and yeah, now we can almost serve any language services. So that's something that we are very, very proud of. And about a year ago, we launched this specialized help that allows companies to be on the platform. So now our blind users have two options. They have an option to call a volunteer if they need to sort out their record collection, or figure out if their shirt is matching to their jeans, these everyday tasks. But sometimes you need to talk to an expert, and sometimes you need to talk to a trusted employee. So we launched this about a year ago. Microsoft, Google were the first two companies on board, and followed by Lloyds Bank Group, which we are so proud of to work with you guys. So now our users can contact the customer support centers of these organizations directly through the app. And that really allows for way, way more independence and being able to handle sensitive things really talk to an expert and get expert help on the things that you need. So you don't need to wait for days and weeks for your friends and family to come over, but you can like, have the same experience with products and services that people with sight have.
And I guess you've just explained there what the advantages are for the blind and low vision community. I guess for the organisations that you're working with, Google, Microsoft and Lloyds for example, what do you think the benefits from that sort of company perspective are in terms of getting involved with technology like Be My Eyes?
Yeah, I think there are several benefits. One is the companies can do the right thing and be able to serve everyone equally. There are 253 million people who are blind or low vision in the world. In the UK alone, there's 2 million with sight loss and 360,000 people who are legally blind. So that's a lot of people that are currently excluded from having access to the services that people with sight have. So I think one is to do the right thing, but there's also a lot of people, so I think it makes sense also because it makes business sense. And what we want to do with Be My Eyes and why we think it's important that companies receive these calls is also so you will get a better understanding of when your products and services are failing from an accessibility standpoint, and hopefully transforming these calls into product improvements so the calls won't happen again. So we really see it as a good foundation to make banking more accessible because you get an insight to what the problems actually are.
Yeah, that's a really good way of looking at it. So I was looking at the awards that Be My Eyes have won since it launched, and you guys are winning awards right, left and centre. It's just amazing. But I guess aside from the awards, what for you personally is the biggest achievement for Be My Eyes?
I think that what motivates everyone on the team is the fact that people are able to live life in different ways because of the app, and because we say that Be My Eyes harness like human generosity and technology, and that combination allows people to live their life more independently. And if there's one thing that we are proud of, that is it. Being able to provide a completely free service, completely unlimited service to people who are blind or low vision all over the world is, I think, our greatest achievement. And being sticking to that, we have our philosophy is that an accessibility tool is only accessible if it's also financially accessible. And if you look at the demography of people who are blind or low vision, the majority live in low income settings. So being able to provide a free service for and continuing to provide a free service is something that we're very proud of.
Cool. And obviously we know how popular the app is with the blind and low vision community. Do you think that is because of the independence that it provides that community? So when we're talking about things like financial sort of inquiries and what have you, it removes that barrier of having to ask somebody else for help. Do you think that is the kind of the biggest reason around the popularity?
I think so. I think it allows for a different kind of independence that was not possible before. I think Mark mentioned it before with the example of having to wait for family members to come over to talk your bank matters with. That's not being truly independent. But the fact that you can talk to a member of the bank or like a staff member from the bank really allows people to get that kind of independence that we all have and enjoy. And I think that's only fair. And I think it's I think it's an amazing step that Lloyds has taken to be enabling this kind of independence for your blind and low vision customers.
Brilliant. And because it is Global Accessibility Awareness Day today, a question, I guess from your expertise and kind of the background you come from, to all of our colleagues that will be watching this, who are all doing various roles but looking at how we transform our bank, what would be your top tips to them?
I think that accessibility traditionally has been an afterthought. So whether it's in a design or in a design new products, whatever it can be. It's traditionally something that we're like, oh, we also have to make sure that it can be used by this group, and this group, and then it doesn't get that good.
Yeah.
So I think that if you can think accessibility a part of the very early steps, and when you say it out loud, it makes total sense that everyone should have access to the same kind of information. Whether you are blind or low vision, or you're deaf, or you're in a wheelchair, whatever it can be, like your cognitive disability. So just making that a part of the design journey, and making that a part of the when you're coming up with some kind of new innovation, a new idea, making sure that it can be used by everyone should really be the first thought. So I hope if this is something that all teams can think about, then I think we'll be in a much better place.
Yeah, I agree. And I guess finally, so I'm a volunteer on Be My Eyes. I know there's other people in the room who are. For any colleagues who haven't signed up, can you just quickly tell them how easy it is and what they need to do, and then I guess what the experience would be of a volunteer on the app?
Yeah, so to be a volunteer on Be My Eyes, you simply just go into the App Store or the Play Store and download the Be My Eyes app. Then you have two options. You can sign in as a blind user, you can sign in as a sighted volunteer. If you sign in as a volunteer, you just select the languages that you speak. So if you speak more than English, you can select those languages. And then you're pretty much good to go. And then whenever someone needs help, you will receive a push notification saying someone needs your help. There's no phone numbers, emails, names, or anything like that shared. So it's just that you just get a push notification saying someone needs your help. When you accept that, a live video connection is established. So if you're trying to figure out what the label is on this bottle, or the blind person is, they point their phone at the bottle, and you would explain what the blind person is seeing. And as I said, we're lucky to have so many volunteers. So you'll maybe get a call every other week, or maybe once a month, depending on where you are in the world and which language you speak. You'll never be disturbed outside, like in the middle of the night, because we connect based on the language and time zones. And if you don't have time, no problem at all. We call several volunteers at the same time, and it's just the first one to accept that gets the call.
Amazing. So easy.
It's very, very easy.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for joining us today. That's been really, really interesting to hear from you directly. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
It was really interesting here. Do you have a user kind of feedback and like a rating in terms of people were more helpful than others?
Yeah, so after each call, we rate both the volunteer and the blind user rates, or your agents, all rate the calls if it was a good experience or if it was a bad experience. And if it was a bad experience, you have a chance to go in and like say, oh, it was something with the audio, it's something, a technical thing, or if the person was not helpful. If it was a good experience, they also have the option to go in and share it on social media and stuff like that, which is also something that has happened with some of your customers saying, hey, we received great help from Voice, and it's like built into the whole thing. Yeah, that rating system is very effective. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. That was really interesting. The idea that this sort of tech exists, it's amazing that we partner with it. What's the future strategy for Be My Eyes? Where do you want to take it? Is it growing a volunteer base? Is it having new tech?
So it's several things. It's like, first of all, like growing the community. As I said to begin with, we only have 130,000 blind and low vision users, and there's 253 million in the world. So there's a lot to be done to get the word out. And then, of course, getting more and more companies on the platform, because we think that's a really good way to make the world a more accessible place and like reach our goal of doing that. So those are our main goals. We've weirdly enough found it quite easy to get volunteers. We get a few thousand every single day, just because people hear about it and like, this makes so much sense, and it's so little effort to make a difference for someone else. I think that we are all built to help each other out, and I think with technology just removes that barrier for volunteering, where traditionally you'd have to go down to the local school to paint a fence or go to a garden and that's just structurally pretty hard, but you can answer a call and help someone set the oven to the right temperature so they can have a perfectly cooked chicken for dinner. It takes you 30 seconds and it allows someone to like live life more independently. So yeah, growing the community, also a sidetrack, I'm sorry, but growing the community is really making sure that this gets out to more and more companies, more and more blind users, and of course also more volunteers who can assist.
And you do get great feedback from the volunteers. You see it online all the time, saying they've taken a call and it's just amazing and it's made them feel fantastic, and yeah, it's really made their day. And it is, like as you say, literally just a minute, if that. And there are some great stories. There was one of our colleagues who was asked to help find somebody's cat.
Yeah.
It was lost in their apartment, so the phone was going around trying to find the cat, but it made their day. It really did. And they were talking about it for such a long time.
Yeah.
Did they find a cat?
I can't remember. Everyone asked, but I can never remember the end of the story. I'm sure they did.
Yeah, I think that's very, very true. That even though it seems like a simple task, it just, and talking about on this day, that's Global Accessibility Awareness Day, every time a volunteer gets a call, it creates some kind of awareness. It's like a sneak peek into a world that a lot of us don't really understand. But when you see how challenging it can be to cook your own dinner, if the systems get messed up a little bit, I think that creates an awareness that is really important to like see a change, because there's so many people that are being exposed to what bad accessibility design means and how it impacts people's lives. So hopefully the right volunteers will get the call, so they can say, okay, in my company or in my role in a public institution, we need to think about designing for the masses. We need to make our things more inclusive for everyone. So that, I think that's a good side effect of having just also normal people taking these calls and getting an understanding of what it means to be blind, but how life without this sight, what's like.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much. Yeah.